AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It is the Matt McNeil Show. You heard me talk about this. I went and saw it this last weekend, Dial M for Murder over at the Guthrie Theater. I'll say this, it's one of the more enjoyable theater experiences you will ever have. It is sensational. And one little bit of a suggestion, if I can, for you. Do not read anything necessarily about it before you go, because it's so well done and it's fun. I've never seen it. To go in there and not really know what it was about, to go and witness it, it was an absolute treat. Just wonderful. Kind enough to join us right now to talk about Dial M for Murder over at the Guthrie is the adapter for the play. Jeffrey Hatcher is kind enough to join us to talk about his work on the play and putting it on at the Guthrie. Jeffrey, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Oh, no, it's great to be had.
Well, you, of course, done many things over at the Guthrie. You've also worked on Broadway, film and television. You've been writing there. Numerous awards you've won. If I can start, for a lot of people out there, just what exactly is the role of an adapter when it comes to a play?
Well, usually it means that you're adapting from a different medium. You know, somebody might say, here's a novel, or here's, they've even done it with films. In this case, it's a play from the early 1950s, and it's a very good play written by Frederick Knott. And in this case, the people who asked me to work on it said, is there a way that we can make it feel a bit more contemporary without changing the time period? Is there something we can do in the women's roles that might give them a bit more to do? And are there a few twists and turns that we can get into the show without upending any of the clockwork plotting? Because it's very much one of those crafted plays from that period that are all about the clues and the twists and the turns. And so you don't want to screw anything up when you're adapting something like that.
I'm going to say this, and I hope I don't offend you by saying this. The changes you've made make this play, make Dial M for Murder, insanely relatable, even though it is still staged. Is what, early 60s, late 50s, early 60s when the staging is?
The mid-50s, I think is fair.
Mid-50s. What you have done with your adaptation, with your slight changes, which have really resonate, has made that it is so relatable and enjoyable and understandable, what you have done with that.
Well, thank you. I think we can give away one thing about these changes, and that's that in the original play, there's an affair in the middle of all these murder plots. And it was a love affair between a man and a woman, as one might assume from that period. And the big switch here is that we decided that we'd switch one of the characters, the man, to a woman. So it's an affair between two women. And it's amazing what it does just by altering that with one click. Suddenly, fear becomes increased, suspense, the need to hide oneself from the glare of the society in which you live. And this is a very upper crust London couple. So what was at one point an affair that, of course, had to be covered, this is life and death stuff, by altering that.
And when you did that, I mean, that's one of the things which is just amazing is you've actually done something to where you've added more tension to a version because it resonates more now, even though it's kind of more of a modern theme. The impacts of that one change, if you apply it to the mid 1950s, you don't let that go by. That this would be, it goes from just a scandal to this would be sensationalized beyond sensationalized at that point.
Oh yeah. The play was in Chicago recently in a different production, and the artistic director there shared a letter they got from a woman, and from what I could glean, the woman was probably in her 60s or 70s. Just the way she wrote about things, it just felt like that was her. That her era was mid-century. And she said she'd been going to the theater for years and years, and she hadn't ever seen a play from this era that spoke to her. She was obviously lesbian, and that this suddenly had great impact. It's one thing if you're writing a new play about these subjects, and there are a lot of terrific plays about women loving women, men loving men, contemporary plays. But by inserting it into that world, a world that we think of it like as a locked door, as a closet that can't be opened. It suddenly, she said she saw her life on stage in a way that she hadn't imagined for the first time. And I was very moved by that because, in one sense, we're still talking about a murder mystery thriller, where people stab each other and they're inspectors and all that sort of thing. But it meant a lot to her, and so I'm extrapolating and imagining it that it must mean a lot to other people too.
Well, and it basically is almost kind of doing a redo, being able to see something that would have helped and resonated back then, only now in a modern sense, because it is very 1950s. You do a magnificent job, that the entire production does, of staging this where it feels like you are looking at something in the 1950s.
Yes, and it was very important to keep that time period for a lot of plot reasons.
Yeah.
It's a world of rotary telephones and real keys that turn locks, so you couldn't update it without losing all that important stuff. But also, it's a societal thing. We all enjoy going back into that world because it's comfort food. It's cocktails and martinis and silver and all that. But at the same time, we know about the repression. We understand that now, and it makes it much richer territory.
Two other things about the adaptation. I know, and part of this is the staging and stuff, so it's other people as well involved in the presentation. But first thing, one thing you mentioned in the program guide, I read that interview that you did, and that this is a play that was designed for more of a traditional stage. The McGuire stage kind of thing. This is now being
right.
though put out there on the thrust stage, which is for when you're looking at a theater production. Obviously, that changes. There's so many different dynamics that can change with that. As the adapter here, how did you have to approach that?
Well, that's really more the purview of the director, and in this case, Tracy Brigden, who directs the production brilliantly. She's an old friend of mine, and we worked very closely on this production. She knows how to move people around the stage, but keep the focus precise, because prosceniums force you to look just at that one letterbox. But as you say, in the thrust, one of the worst things about a thrust is you're sitting in the house and you look across the stage and you say, "Hey, that's my dentist over there in row 5." And it's very easy to become distracted by the littlest things. So you have to really orchestrate movement, lighting. Actors have to know when to slow down so that another part of the stage can pop. It takes a lot of control, and they at a place like the Guthrie during the previews, different people from the staff would sit at different places, and they'd report back to Tracy, "Well, you can't see him for these 10 seconds, or somebody's walking in front of somebody else during a key moment for these 5 seconds," and so then they have to recalibrate all that stuff. It's an amazing dance, and when it works well in a thrust. If she actually managed to make that thrust, which has 1,100 seats, feel like a very intimate theater, which is kind of unbelievable.
And she does. Tracy did a great job there. One of the things which is so impressive is it feels like you are sitting in the room watching this all unfold. And I think for whether the adapter, the stage direction, the director, the actors, if you can get the audience to where they're feeling like they're actually just there as a witness. Then you kind of, and they pull it off. That is a really cool stage.
I'll give you an odd little example. All of these actors are the kind of actors who don't need microphones. They have great developed voices, but to work on a stage like that without a mic, you have to push a bit. And instead, Tracy said, "Let's mic them so they can reduce their volume to the kind of volume that you would overhear if you were sitting in the apartment next door." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in effect, the audience doesn't know that they're mic'd, but it allows the audience to feel like they're overhearing scenes as opposed to having the stuff broadcast at them, which is actually what we're doing by miking them. So it's a very sly, very clever design scheme, top to bottom, from the music and the sound effects to the gorgeous sets and costumes. And it's a great use of that space.
Jeffrey Hatcher joining us. He's the adapter for Dial M for Murder over at the Guthrie. Go get tickets. It plays till the end of February here. We want people to go get tickets. So I have to imagine, as you're the adapter for this, that is, and I think this is the correct term to use, that is a tight script. That is a tight story. I imagine if you're adapting it, that your room somewhat becomes like a conspiracy theory, quorum house where you basically have cards everywhere because of something. You got to make sure there's so many things you've got to keep track of. It's a great script. It's easy to follow for the viewer, but there's a lot in there, and you're kind of paying attention to it. Talk about that challenge, because your base material is so well done originally to make sure that is not lost.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Frederick Knott. In addition to Dial-In for Murder, he also wrote Wait Until Dark, which I think most people know from the Audrey Hepburn, Alan Arkin movie. And it took him 7 years to write Dial-In for Murder. Meticulous, slow, blueprint work. For me, when you're handed something that good, it's a little like at the end of a Bond film when he's got to turn off the bomb and he's not sure which wire to pull. So you have to go in there very surgically and say, well, this works and this works. Here we have a little air to spend. Can I try this plot move? And sometimes you try a plot move and you go, no, that's going to upend a bunch of things. So you have to cut it. But we were able to find a couple areas that say, yeah, I can do that, and it won't change anything that Knott did, and it even complements something else. So it's very much surgical work. But if you get into that sort of thing, as I do, it's a lot of fun.
It becomes a puzzle.
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's your patient is there on the table, and there's nothing wrong with the patient. I suppose it's more like plastic surgery than it would be, like take the heart out and put a new lung in. But if murder mysteries and thrillers are your sort of thing, then this is a great joy. It's like being asked to get under the hood of the best Aston Martin that was ever made.
As an adapter, one of the things I think which is kind of an important element of what you do is the history is littered with plays and musicals and things that just disappear. That they might even be wildly popular for 20 years, and then after 1920, no one ever watched it again. And it's kind of one of the things that there's tons of that stuff out there. And as an adapter, what you kind of have done with Dial-In for Murder here is it's insanely relevant. I mean, it's hard to kind of describe that. Like it's 1950s. It's an older story. It's not like you've upgraded this into how the Guthrie sometimes does with some of the Shakespeare and puts it in different time zones and stuff.
Yeah.
But it still is that. But by what you've done is you've made this to where for the next 20, 30 years, people will still be able to go to this. And even though it's taking place in the 1950s, it still resonates there. I mean, that's the real talent here is you can take a play or a piece of work that might be forgotten, and by updating it, once again, I don't want to upset you, make it a little bit better. Maybe not necessarily in a literary sense, but in a relatability sense.
No, I know what you mean, and I'm thrilled that it's getting so many productions and that people seem to be feeling the same thing that you've just expressed. Yeah, I think, but it would only work and does only work because in the original there is a man who's gaslighting his wife, and there is jealousy and male rage, and there is a love that's trying to struggle its way forward. It required a little bit of excavating to make this adaptation, but it was always there. Mm-hmm. So what I think you can't do is try to, graft something onto something that was never meant to have it, because then to continue that surgical metaphor, then the body rejects the organ. And in this case, because it was always embedded in Frederick Knott's original DNA, it was a lot easier to make it bloom and come out.
It's like you said, the humanity is there, the human emotions, the human feelings. Those don't change over time. It's and I think, like you said, what was the term? Cosmetic surgery. It's more cosmetic than anything else. I think you've done a great job there. One last thing I do want to ask you about here, just for elaborating for the audience. My wife goes into this and she's I love Agatha Christie. I said, well, I don't think this is like Agatha Christie though, and it's not. There's kind of the whodunits and then there are thrillers. Describe the kind of the difference between those.
Sure. Well, with a whodunit, a murder mystery, the question is always who committed the murder. Mm-hmm. Who done it? Who's the killer? And that's usually revealed either right at the end or close-ish to the end. This is what they often call an inverted murder mystery. And the first examples of that date back to, say, the 1890s, in which you know everything about the murder, you know who the killer is. And the tension and suspense is in you watching to see if it's going to work. Is it going to be foiled? Is somebody else going to be killed? Is there going to be a reversal? And the best example, probably for most contemporary audiences, is Columbo. And even more recently, that show on Peacock, Poker Face.
Yeah.
In which, there's usually the guest star of the week who's the murderer, and you watch the murder committed, and it seems to be perfect. Then in comes Columbo to unravel it. So Dial M for Murder is like the first gold standard Rolls-Royce version of a great Columbo episode.
Oh, I would agree with that. And like I said, your work on it didn't change it. It accentuated it. You got every bit of flavor out of that you could, and you did a fantastic job. It is over at the Guthrie. I will say I saw it. I mean, it was packed. I don't even know if there are tickets available. I know some people that have tried to go get rush seats and they can't get them. But if you can get tickets, go see it. Dial M for Murder over at the Guthrie Theater. It plays until Sunday, February 25th.
Yep, 25th of Deeds.
Yep, it's there then. Jeffrey, an absolute privilege to chat with you. I really appreciate you sharing some insights into your work and on this play. And all my best on this. Congratulations on a great production.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Jeffrey Hatcher, the adapter for Dial M for Murder, kind enough to join us today. Hey, one thing we got to do here before we go into break, I got a pair of tickets to give away to the meet and greet with AM 950 next Tuesday over at Park Tavern, 6 to 8 p.m. I got a pair of tickets to give away right now. Caller number 5, 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Caller number 5, you get yourself a pair of tickets to the meet and greet with us at AM 950. Good luck on that. We'll come back, wrap up the show. It's the Matt McNeil Show on AM 950.